Shalom. Call hello, Yahweh by Hashem, Hawashai by Hashem, Rakar Kodash. Double honors unto the apostles, double honors unto the elder bishops. Salutations to all my fellow laborers doing this work in truth and sincerity, risking their lives and their freedom to do so, now more so than ever. To the scattered elect that are scattered around the four corners of the earth, that be like unto the speckled bird among the heathens, that look like the heathens, and to the Akwath that are listening and learning. To you, I say Shalom. This is your brother Malcolm from the branch of the great millstone, coming back at you with another lesson in truth. And this video from this young lady here, I forget her name. I think it's Romero, I believe her is her last name. This very attractive young lady. She's been, she hasn't responded to any of my comments yet, but she's doing videos on the subject matter that I've been talking about for like the last several years, especially this newfound whiteness. All right, there's no such thing as white people. They made it up. All right, and it was made up to control the narrative. It was made up to push this false ideology called white superiority. All right, and they created a whole doctrine. And all these hypotheses and theories behind it that cannot be backed up by history nor scripture. Because when you actually go into history, what happens is, what she's going to talk about. Now, remember, a lot of these things that she's spoken about, I've been talking about for years. It's particularly this subject matter, because I don't think anyone in all Israel hit this subject matter as hard as I did. Except maybe the elder bishop Taz out up top at the main camp, Elder Taz, and he was the first one to go in, to bring out this letter that she's going to use that was written by Ben Franklin, which is pretty condemning and proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that Europe was not always white. See, they have this false concept that everyone that's so-called white came from Europe or European, and those are made up. All right, the so-called white man is actually Esau, Edom. So let me grab a scripture, and then I'm going to let her speak, and then when she says something that that's really relevant, I'm going to come in and chime in and bring out to make clarification on some of the things that she doesn't know, because she's coming at this from a worldly sense. And I'm right there with her, but I'm going to also use the spiritual side of it, how this history lines up biblically, all right, completely and totally biblically. But two scriptures actually. Let me get Obadiah 1:6, because so-called white people, all right, the ones who are actually, the bloodline of Edom, that's who they are. They're the Edomites. They're Esau. They're the stock of Edom. All right. And they never wanted the world to know that. All right. So, they claim to be the Anglo-Saxons. They claim to be, JOOs, and they're not any of that. They're actually Edom. But this is Obadiah 1:6. And it says, how are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought up? Well, the main source is the Bible. All right. Let me go to the book of Sirach. I mean, not Sirach, but Second Ezra. One of my favorite scriptures, 6:27-28. And it reads, for evil shall be put out, and deceit shall be quenched. All right. As for faith, it shall flourish. Corruption shall be overcome, and the truth, which have been so long without fruit, shall be declared. And see, now we're living in a time when the truth is not only coming from the Hebrew Israelites, but the rest of the world is starting to learn it too. All right. Okay. Because Apostle Ramlan sent me this particular video, and a couple of other people have sent me other videos of hers. All right. And there was one more scripture I had in mind. Well, the Spirit will bring it back. But without any further ado, let me get my sound ready, because people come behind me be messing with stuff. Let's get Sound right? Yep. So without any further ado, Miss Romero.
Century, Ben Franklin is looking at the Germans and saying, "You guys are stupid and you're swarthy, and we don't want you here. We want to keep our colonies as white as possible." And you fast forward 150 years, and you have Hitler saying, to lots of other ethnic groups in Europe, like, "You guys are stupid and you're swarthy, and we don't want you here, and we want to keep our country as white as possible."
So let's pause right there. So Ben Franklin in 1751 wrote a letter where he was calling Germans and other Europeans swarthy. Hitler was doing the same thing. They wanted to keep Germany and Europe as white as possible. All right, and then this lie about the African thing. Look, let's get it straight. There are two. The whole world is dark. All right. There are Indians in India that are darker than some Africans, that are darker than some Negroes. I see them in Chicago all the time. All right. Same thing in Cambodia, same thing in Malaysia, same thing in Indonesia. Just as dark and darker in some cases. All right. So, but none of those people are called black. But I'm going to go, let's pull it up. I should have did this ahead of time. The Winston Simplified, maybe it'll open up another screen. And it'll probably, yep, there it is, the water. Why is it not? Okay, let's do this again. There it is. I'm going to pull it up and put pictures of it. Oh, it's sideways. Okay. See, I'm actually holding this book in my hand. It's turned this way. See? But, that's the way straight up. So that's what you're looking at. This is the Winston Simplified Dictionary. So I want to look at swarthy. Remember, Ben Franklin just called the Germans swarthy. So Hitler came 150 years later, then he definitely wasn't swarthy. All right. So there's a lot of history that's been hidden, that's been lied, that's been redacted, omitted, or changed. So I'm going to go to the word swarthy in here, the book that you're looking at on the screen. All right. I'll let you hear the definition of swarthy when she said it. So I'm going to start with swart, and it's on page 629. All right, and it says swart, a dark or dusky hue of color, dark skin, also swarthy. All right, so let's look at swarthy. Okay, a dark or dusky hue of color, dark skin, also swart and swarthy, swarthiness. Now, I've read books where it referred to King James and the hordes of swarthy Scots, the dusky Scots. So who are these people, so that would make, even though I do believe that Sean Connery is actually one of those scattered among the heathen that looks like the heathen, but who are these people running around Scotland, Ireland, and Britain? Because when she reads that letter, you're going to also hear Ben Franklin claim to be, that everybody in Europe is tawny, dusky, or swarthy. Everyone in the world, for that matter, and in Europe. So you're going to hear him lie. Okay? So real quick, I want to get these definitions so I can let her talk. I'm just going to let her talk. So let's go to dusky. Well, let's go to tawny since we're closer to T. Let's find that word tawny. I hadn't looked that one up yet. Tawny. All right? A yellowish brown, kind of like me. All right? The color as a tawny lion. So a lion can be, like a tannish, brown, light brown. It's basically what it is. Now let's go to dusky, because that was always, Jake would signify, talk about one another, insult one another jokingly. And one of the words they would say is dusky. Over years it became dusty, your dusty ass, your dusky. But they were really saying dusky. But here's a definition of dusky. It's on 193. And it reads, um, dusky, partially dark, tending to blackness, as a dusky complexion, duskily and duskiness. All right, so literally the Germans were dusky, swarthy, and tawny. All right, so let's let her speak now. Let's go back. Let her finish now.
And the irony of that is astounding to me. Ben Franklin was looking down on them and saying, you're not good enough to come over here. You're not white enough to come over here. Like, don't come over here and mess up our stuff. But I want to just make the argument here that I don't think white is a thing. White is a color of a crayon. Hi, I'm Danielle Romero, and thanks so much for being with me on my channel, where I have been delving into my family's ancestry and how that connects to the American story and the immigrant story. We're going to dive into the German immigrant experience at the time of Ben Franklin. Even in the early years of the United States, immigration was a point of contention for some of the founding fathers. Benjamin Franklin, a prominent figure in American history, expressed concerns about German immigrants moving into the 13 colonies in the mid-18th century. In his essay titled Observations Concerning the Increasing of Mankind, Peopling of Countries, etc., which was written in 1755, Franklin reacted to the influx of German immigrants and the potential negative impact on the American colony.
Now, in the damn commercial, wasn't no damn commercial when I first watched this at all. Hey, Esau. Now, mind you, the colonies were actually set up by dark people. That's another hidden history. They were called Huguenots. And those were your swarthy, crypto Jews, Moors, and Morenos that left Portugal and Spain when it fell. Now watch them make this scene right here, the thumbnail on top of that. You bastards.
Yes. And a little bit later on in the video, I want to share some of the pretty shocking things he wrote about the German immigrants coming to the country. Now, growing up, I loved American history. When I was a little girl, my dad and I would sit and watch Civil War documentaries on the couch. They were on PBS. And I think that was probably my earliest memory of just wanting to know more about the American story. And as I got older, I started realizing that, like, there are many facets to the American story. And I think sometimes they are willfully revised. And I think other times, there's the sin of omission. And I think sometimes there's so much nuance to the story that it's almost impossible for one person to cover all of it at one time. Franklin had a lot of concerns about immigrants, in particular German immigrants. According to him, they weren't the sharpest tools in the shed, so to speak. He famously wrote this about them, quote, "Those who come hither are..."
They built the castles. You notice when, and you know how that's an easy fact, because when a country takes over, the building becomes different. And if you notice, they don't build the old structures in Europe. They didn't continue to build that way because they weren't the ones that built it. And there were so many relics left of all these dark people that it was impossible to hide it all. But let's let it continue.
Generally of the most ignorant, stupid sort of their own nation. Ouch. But he goes on to say that the Germans struggled to adapt to the local way of life.
This also shows you that the founding fathers of America were extremely racist and prejudiced and hateful toward people of color. This proves it. And the laws that govern this country were never meant for people of color, especially so-called black people.
Here in America. In his eyes, the German immigrants posed a threat to New England's whiteness because of their, quote, swarthy complexion, unquote. Franklin even worried that Pennsylvania, which was founded by the English, would end up more German instead of the German immigrants embracing English language and custom. He said, why should Pennsylvania, founded by the English, become a...
Now, the English that are claiming to be English now, well, they're not the English. That's where you need to look into the history of Cromwell, all right? And what Cromwell did to remove the same swarthy English, Brits, Scots, and Irish out of Scotland and Ireland, all right? Because they make this false claim that they're the Saxons, and they're not. They're the Edomites. So this is Franklin's attempt to keep that lie going and hide the fact that they're the actual Edomites that the Bible speaks of.
Colony of aliens who will be shortly so numerous as to Germanize us instead of us Anglifying them, and will never adopt our language or customs any more than they can acquire our complexion.
Wow.
And guess what? Benjamin Franklin was actually not the only founding father who had concerns about German immigrants back in the day.
You don't say.
Alexander Hamilton, the brilliant mind we all know from the musical, also had his reservations. He actually believed that an influx of foreigners would create a mishmash of cultures, and it would corrupt the national spirit and complicate public opinion. Funny enough, to support his view, Alexander Hamilton actually pointed to a precedent in which being open to foreigners was detrimental. And what he pointed to was the extermination of the indigenous peoples of the Americas. And he said on that, quote, perhaps a lesson is here taught which ought not to be despised. That saying that the Native Americans shouldn't have been as friendly to the settlers as they were. Look what happened to him. And then he's turning that around and saying, look, maybe we should look at what happened to them and not be so welcoming to these immigrants. Now, even Thomas Jefferson...
And that's something that Edom has always worried about, is recompense and payback, all right? And he's readily admitting that, this is the history under the history. And that was the part that I had problems with in school. I was like, wait a minute, they raped, robbed, murdered, and killed and stole these people's land. I saw that in the 6th and 7th grade. I saw it clearly, but I was always told to be quiet and shut up, and you start in trouble in school when I would talk that way.
The author of the Declaration of Independence, felt a bit uneasy about German immigrants forming their own communities and holding on to their language, their habits, and their principles of government. He wrote, as to other foreigners, it is thought better to discourage their settling together in large masses, Jefferson wrote, wherein, as in our German settlements, they preserve for a long time their own languages, habits, and principles of government. Benjamin Franklin also wrote this in a letter. He said, quote, which leads me to add one remark, that the number of purely white people in the world is proportionately very small. All
Obadiah, I have made you small among the heathen. Esau is actually a small race at this point, especially now that so many people are impregnating his women, and then as simple as that, because it doesn't matter about the male, because about color, because when an Edomite male impregnates another people, even if they come out dark, they're still Edom. But so many of their women, especially now, are making babies with melanated men. All right, and then they also lost so many to the opioids. They're smaller than small at this point. So this sentiment that they had back then, they have it even more so now.
Africa is black or tawny. Asia is chiefly tawny. America,
let me go back a little bit.
Exclusive of the...
So you already heard the definition.
He said, quote,
you've already heard the definition of tawny, dusky, and swarthy. Okay?
Leads me to add one remark, that the number of purely white people in the world is proportionately very small. All Africa is black or tawny. Asia is chiefly tawny. America, exclusive of the newcomers, wholly so. And in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, the French, the Russians, and the Swedes are generally of what we call swarthy complexions.
Wait, the Russians, the Germans, and the Swedes. That's why Putin has been showing all those dark icons of the Lord and the saints and the apostles and the disciples, etc., etc. So I've been telling you forever that the people in Europe, that's call themselves the Swedes, they're not. When I tell you, these people they love the Vikings. You are not the Vikings. You are not the Scots. You are not the Irish. You are not the Brits. You are not the Saxons. All right, and think about it. He's gonna say that could let you know that all those people were swarthy, were not white, but yet the Saxons in Britain were. Think about it. No, that's when you learn the history about Cromwell, what Oliver Cromwell did, removing the dark, swarthy people from Europe, all right, with violence. And it was time for them to go down because the Renaissance had to happen. It was prophesied in the Bible. They had to Esau had to rise again. Malachi, when it says they will rebuild the desolate places, and so they had to rise again. That old serpent Satan, all right, got loosed. So they got loosed a little short season, all right.
Swedes or swarthy. That's like, I don't know.
Yeah, so she's like the Swedes are swarthy because when you think of Swedish, you're thinking of these tall blonde people. Well, they're the people that are there now, just like the people in America are the people there now. The people in Israel, the people there now, they aren't the original swarthy people.
As are the Germans also, the Saxons only accepted,
Which is
who with the English
a
make
lie.
the principal body of white people on the face of the earth. I wish their numbers were increased. Why should, in the sight of superior beings, darken its people? Why increase the sons of Africa by planting them in America?
Then he pushed that lie Africa because he just said that the Swedes, and all the Germans and all these people are swarthy. They were not Africans. All right, Africans are a different dark race of people. You can look in either Zondervan's Dictionary Bible, and it clearly tells you that Ham became the forefather of the dark races, not the Negroes. And then it went on to name the four sons of Ham, which basically cover the history of the African people. All right, the Negroes that are in Africa fled there after the fall of Rome. Okay, and they fled into the west coast of Africa, which is why there are maps from the 1700s that had a portion of Africa called Negro land. Africans were never called Negroes. All right. So where did those Negroes come from? They came from Jerusalem. All right, in different parts of Asia that they fraudulently call the Middle East today.
Where we have so far an opportunity, by excluding all blacks and tawnies, of increasing the lovely white and red.
So they know that, they just put all these commercials now. That when I watched this, they had no commercials. This is really pissing me off. And she said white
Now, I did some
and red. And Esau is red. He's not white. All right? And the Native Americans were also tawny and dusky and swarthy. All right? They were not red. Only the so-called white man is red. And the first came out red all over like a hairy garment. All right? But this is from the book. This is definitely going to have to be a 2 parts. But this is the book, The Negro Question. All right? The Negro Question. And I'm going to read page 6 with Professor Boyd Dawkins. All right? It says, Professor Boyd Dawkins, Professor of Geology, Manchester University, London, 1879, Our Remote Ancestry, pages 95 through 106. The original people of Britain, France, Spain, and England were short black men about 5'6" in height. They were in England when their fathers, the white English, invaded, you see, the Edomites, all right, in Cromwell when they took over. In 449 AD, our fathers were a warlike people who by 607 AD had pushed the Basque west into Wales, Cumberland, Westmore, Highland, Scotland, and Devon. All right, those swarthy hordes of Scotland. The black people boasted that they were citizens of the Roman Empire. The Welsh and the ancient Britons, those were those scattered Israelites that were left over in Rome. Right? The Welsh, the ancient Britons, were in possession before Romans ever came here. These black Basque, Britain, have brought the knowledge of iron bronze with them, but yet he said that they were stupid. All right, that's what Franklin said. The iron and bronze technology will be proven perfectly when I show the German tapestry. There's a German tapestry of Germans, swarthy Germans fighting off white wild men from the woods in the 1500s. All right? Why? Because they were the real cave people. They were coming out of the caves of the Caucasus Mountains, and they were forced up into the caves of the Caucasus Mountains. You can read that in Job, the 30th chapter. So we're going to continue this in the next one. We're going to end this one here. So with that, I'm going to give all praise, glory, and honor to Yahweh by Shem Shai, by Hashem Rakakwadash, Wa Abba Babal. See you in the next episode. Shalom.